Thank you, everybody who stayed, and hung out during this. Pretty expected at this point. All right. Let's get back to this.
Player is like 1 versus 4, for example. But what we wouldn't want to happen is everyone in the station to run to this point. And that is for obvious reasons, basically. But
yeah,
I mean, aside from that, like it's just not realistic. Like if something was to happen somewhere, like more often than not, like if there's security on a certain location, you would expect a couple of guys to go and check it out, as opposed to, you know, the whole force to kind of go and check a certain area and then leave the rest of the station exposed, basically.
Could it ever get elevated, though, that, you know, Zone 1's trying to handle it, and then just for proximity, Zone 4? Could Zone 4 or Zone 3 join in, right? If it gets a certain amount of, you know, craziness, if it's really loud and stuff's blowing up and those audible cues, you know?
So that's something we're still kind of like experimenting with at the moment. But what might be nice, for example, is if, say, again, you're in here, you kind of fight these guys, and they're down to the last man, and he's kind of on his own, and he's struggling.
You know what I think I'm going to do? This is going to be part 2. I'm probably just going to split this into 2 parts because this ended up being incredibly long anyways. So you just got kind of thrown into the deep end here. I will make sure part 1 is linked as well. We had a little problem with the computer here. You know how it is. Far too often.
Struggling, you know, maybe he radios for support, and then in that case we could say the nearest kind of next zone, he's basically requesting help. And then something else which we've not kind of decided yet for this location, for example, but something we may do in other locations is, if an enemy or a group of enemies are struggling, perhaps they call in like dropship support, and then, you know, an extra wave of enemies could kind of actually come to the location. And in that case, we can obviously kind of make things more difficult for the player. So
that's cool.
Yeah, could end up with enemies coming in from behind him that he thought he'd already dealt with.
Exactly. And again, like we obviously we're kind of working on some of the systems at the moment, but there will be systems that also allow players to kind of like, you know, give themselves a little bit more of an advantage to kind of tackling some of these situations as well.
That's a lot. That's chunky. We've been talking for a while. It's really cool to see the progress, though. How are you and the team feeling about it so far? About, you know, where it's been and how it's come and where you're at?
To be honest, it's like at the moment I feel like everyone's starting to get quite excited about everything, because it's obviously in the past when you're kind of in block out, and especially when you're developing a new game that's kind of the tech is kind of moving along with it at the same time. There's a lot of kind of unknowns, and you're kind of planning and you're setting things up with the assumption of how something's going to work. But we're kind of past that first hurdle, and we're kind of getting into the stage now where it's kind of like we know what the spaces are. We've obviously been developing them for a while. Now we know what the mechanics are, and they're starting to come online. And
plus we've got some gorgeous art as well now to run around, which always really helps.
Exactly, yeah.
That's
cool. I mean, the art is obviously stunning, and the thing, like, I'm most grateful for this video is I can take all the credit for the artwork that's been shown.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Ross. I know you and the team are all busy. Like I said, I keep saying it's really good to see the progress, and I'm glad you had time to pull some stuff together so we could show it off to everyone.
Yeah,
the gorgeous art's never really the big problem.
Yeah, thanks, Ross.
To be honest.
Yeah, see you later.
As we said right at the top of the show, the social team have got some good progress that they've made on the Interrupt Tech, and I think we're going to bring Phil in, aren't we, to chat through that and show some more videos.
Cool. Hey guys.
Hey, how you doing,
hey,
Phil?
Yeah, I'm good. I've been lurking for the last half hour, so that was great.
You
enjoyed
saw some
it.
of that.
Hard act to follow.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. For those that don't know you, can you introduce yourself to everyone?
Yeah, my name's Philip Meller, and I'm lead design on S42. And my current focus has been on Interrupt Tech.
Awesome. So I assume, yes, I was just going to say, hey, what do you want to show off today? But I assume you're going to jump in Interrupt Tech, so let's go for it.
Well, yeah, I'll talk you through. Start of the year, social team have been doing a big push on scene implementation. So at the end of last year,
Tech. This is like Literally what it sounds like. I'm surprised they put this much time into this.
Most of our scenes were in, but they were in a base fashion. So basically, with the scenes, the player has to play ball, and if the player does anything, the scenes kind of fall apart really. So the big push was on the interstitials. That's the Idris Stanton. The Stanton being the player's base ship for a good chunk of the game. So I'll give you a bit of background on the actual Stanton. It's a military variant of the Idris. It's got a 2-ship complement of 2 Gladiuses, 80-person crew, which is a lot more than the standard Idris
Imagine
crew.
having a whole Idris and then only carrying 2 Gladius.
People to interact with, and it's not just faceless crew. Everyone's got a personality on this ship.
Is that 80 including yourself?
That's freaking wild. Like it's a big ship, tons of space. 80 people. Isn't the whole point that it can carry ships for you? Only 2?
80 included. Yeah, so that's engineers, deck crew, bridge crew, medical, utility, you name it, they're all there. From the very start, Chris's remit was he wanted it believable. He didn't want the usual tropes of with a scene when you interact with someone. It's an easy trap to fall into. You cut to a third-person camera, or you funnel them. You'll shepherd them into a certain area, then you'll lock them in. Chris didn't want that. That was his remit from the start. I don't want that. So that was it's quite the challenge. So it all starts off with the script. So Dave and Will, they had to go and when they were writing the script, they had to keep in mind we needed opportune points during conversations that the player could intervene or break out of or abandon. So that had to be in mind. So that was a challenge for them, and then they had to write. It was wild lines after that. So they had to give us lines which could play out when the player was doing this. So in the middle of a conversation, player walks away. They have to give us wild lines, like for pretty much every character. Where are you going? What are you doing? I thought we were talking. So that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then it was. Sorry, Nick.
I was going to say the whole focus obviously is just on maximum immersion, isn't it? I mean, that's that's been Chris's remit from day one. That you've got to feel like you're actually part of the crew on there, and you're not some disembodied ghost or whatever that can float around and see things on the ship.
That sounds like a fun game.
Reacts to you depending on what you do, even
the
things that you're not actually part of.
Haunting
no,
a spaceship.
definitely a big challenge. But and I was looking forward to it, because I'm not a fan of it where you get locked in. Nothing worse than walking around a location terrified of being dragged into a conversation. So I was looking forward to this a lot. So moving on, PCAP. So when Chris and Hannes did the PCAP, they had to. It must have been tough because they had to keep in mind, again, along with the script, they had to give us opportune points to break in and out. So they couldn't have actors monologuing and gesticulating too much. Otherwise it'd make life awkward for us.
Yeah, but, I was there during some of the early PCAP shoots, and I do remember some of these. And this was before the system was even mature. And you could tell it was already in Chris's head, and the writers knew exactly what they were doing. And you'd see some of our top talent just reiterating different lines and variations. And
it must have been tough because you're crystal balling, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
There's so many hours of PCAP, because of these sequences.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, but ultimately,
you all got a PCAP.
That goal was to get it together, as you say, so you're not locked into a conversation, as Nick said. So you get that extra level and sense of immersion when you're interacting with NPCs wherever you are throughout the game, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So you conversate. You can pretty much attack a scene from any angle if you wish. And then you're not locked in. You can do what you want during the scene. You're not dragged in there. You can actually back off. You can 180, and the AI will react. You'll see in the video later.
But, I was gonna say, man, this is a lot of preamble for some
overlapping at the amount
conversation videos. Maybe jump ahead a little bit here. Sorry.
Recently, are those ones when they do get picked back up, right?
Yeah,
I'm close to, somebody has their conversation between two people. I walk in, they acknowledge me, and they turn to me. Oh, hey, I remember that thing, and they start telling me a story, and I back away. They tell me a line. I then come forward again, and they're like, okay, all right, so let me pick it right back up. And it's I think as far as the tech that's there and And I know it's not the easiest thing to do, but when they're put together the way they're intended to be, they're seamless.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, that's
You
super
don't-
hard for the actors.
You
as well,
don't
'cause
see,
they've got to maintain
you
the
don't see-
intonation.
yeah, you don't see hitches from the animation. You don't see this. You don't see that. It just it flows and it feels really natural, which is really cool.
Yeah, well, that's it. People spot it straight away.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, if you do it clunky, it's kind of you'll spot it.
And this,
But yeah,
and
that's
this
the
is
big
what
challenge.
Chris and the writers, when they were doing the PCAP for these things, so you maintain the intonation, and it does feel seamless. It doesn't feel jarring too much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you have to show us then?
So this is Morrow, everyone's favorite engineer. So he's like the ship's gossip. Every time you stumble across this guy, he's gossiping about something. So in the start conversation, we have 2 interrupt points, which I spoke about before. That's breaking into a conversation. Then he turns his attention to you, and then we have, during the following conversation, we have 5 breakpoints. And that's pause, resume, abandon points. So you can do either of those.
Mm-hmm.
And then we also have the performance based to the left and to the right. So you can attack this from any angle if you want.
That's cool.
Just to be fair to the character department, we should say that the character models in this are the basic versions prior to all the sort of lovely polish that they lavish. The environment.
Yeah, we always hate giving disclaimers, but things are always being pushed on. But yeah, I don't think they are the most up to date. I heard this video may have a little bit of length, but it shows the variety that we have, and although it may even be a little bit repetitive sometimes with the line that's there, again, it shows those angles, it shows the timing and so on. So it's I think it's worth people seeing the variety that's there.
Yeah, it's a lengthy video, and it's a bit of Groundhog Day in there, but that's the whole point of it. It shows all the different scenarios we've catered for. This
Cool.
is just for a single scene.
Yeah, the level of complexity that there has to be depending on approaches.
Awesome, let's watch it.
Yeah. There you go, guys. Right, okay, I'll just share the screen.
Play it.
Yeah, the entire face completely rebuilt afterwards. Lieutenant! Congrats on the big first mission. Exciting stuff. Lieutenant, you alright?
No, gotta poop.
Right, where was I? It must be great to finally feel like a real pilot. And not that you weren't a real pilot before, but now you've actually done something without, blowing up. Never mind, I guess.
Oh yeah, that was actually pretty solid.
Done something without, blowing up. Never mind, I guess.
What? Did he change the delivery of that line because he was leaving? Or was that part of the line no matter what?
Finally feel like a real pilot. And not that you weren't a real pilot before, but now you've actually done something without, blowing up.
Oh, okay, yeah, that is part of the line originally. Okay, that was not because you were backing away. I thought he slowed down his conversation because you were backing away. I was gonna be like, wait, what?
Completely rebuilt afterwards. Apparently the lieutenant looked completely different before Vega. Lieutenant! Congrats on the big first mission. Exciting stuff. It must be great to finally feel like a real pilot. And not that you weren't a real pilot before, but now you've actually done something without, blowing up. Lieutenant, you alright?
I see. So he has specific places he...
Where was I? Speaking of pilots, did you hear what happened to Ishitaka last year? So, we were posted out in some backwater system. Oh, I forget which one. Maybe next. Anyway, we decided to go drinking at this dumper of a trade station. Real dump. Never mind, I guess.
Not into the gossip, dude.
Yeah, the entire face completely rebuilt afterwards. Apparently the lieutenant looked completely different before Vega. Lieutenant! Congrats on the big first mission. Exciting stuff. It must be great to finally feel like a real pilot.
I would prefer more of like a double take kind of noticing rather than just the immediate turnaround and being like, hey, dude. Maybe the little, what?
And not that you weren't a real pilot before, but now you've actually done something without, blowing up. Speaking of pilots, did you hear what happened to Ishitaka last year? So, we were posted out in some backwater system. Oh, I forget which one. Maybe next. Anyway, we decided to go out drinking at this dumper of a trade station. Real dump. Lieutenant, you alright?
Bro, look at this guy over here. You can just like barely zoom in on his eyes. Piercing into your soul from across the room. Like this dude. He's the one I'm worried about.
You alright? Right. Where was I? Ishitaka is completely ripped. I mean, she's totaled. Decides her face could do with a bit of an upgrade. Wakes up the next morning with a nose like the front of Freelancer.
Yeah, next time you see this scene, it might be you
I
playing.
guess.
Maybe. Don't watch this again.
Yeah, the entire face completely rebuilt afterwards. Apparently the lieutenant looked completely different before Vega. Ah, Lieutenant! Congrats on the big first mission. Exciting stuff. It must be great to finally feel like a real pilot. And not that you weren't a real pilot before, but now you've actually done something without, well, blowing up. Speaking of pilots, did you hear what happened to Ishitaka last year? So, we were posted out in some backwater system. Oh, I forget which one. Maybe next. Anyway, we decide to go
It's
drinking
rude
at
to
this
X.
dumper of a trade station. A real dump. Ishitaka is completely ripped. I mean, she's totaled. Decides her face could do with a bit of an upgrade. Wakes up the next morning with a nose like the front of Freelancer. Lieutenant, you alright?
If somebody walks away from you after saying that, maybe
Right. Where was I?
check with them.
The doc said she couldn't fix it. Said she wouldn't fix something that isn't broken. Never mind, I guess. Yeah, the entire face completely rebuilt afterwards. Apparently the lieutenant looked completely different before Vega. Ah, Lieutenant! Congrats on the big first mission. Exciting stuff. It must be great to finally feel like a real pilot. And not that you weren't a real pilot before, but now you've actually done something without, well, blowing up. Speaking of pilots, did you hear what happened to Ishitaka last year? So, we were posted out in some backwater system. Oh, I forget which one. Maybe next. Anyway, we decide to go drinking at this dumper of a trade station.
You can imagine a banjo song for your jump
Ishitaka
point.
is completely ripped. I mean, she's totaled. Decides her face could do with a bit of an
Hardcore ripping the
upgrade.
banjo string.
Wakes up the next morning with a nose like the front of Freelancer. Doc said she couldn't fix it. Said she wouldn't fix something that isn't broken. Lieutenant, you alright?
No?
Right. Where was I? Ishitaka had to walk around with that disaster for a month before she got some more shore leave. Lesson to be learned, Anyway, I'll catch you later.
Wow, he just
Wow, that was pretty
dismissed
cool.
us.
I mean, it showed off. It showed off the variety. You see the nuances in between it, right?
Yeah.
And it's kind of
Oh,
like
yeah.
if you didn't know that it was a system that existed with all these angles, you could look at the video and say, "Wow, it's really repetitive or this and that." But again, it shows off that variety. I'm approaching these NPCs at different angles, at different points. They're breaking off, and again, as I said, the seamless back and forth with the animation to me is cool because if you have hitches in there or the poses aren't lined up or there's not procedural bits driving other bits, the moments it's noticeable, it breaks you out of that immersion, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm looking. There's maybe a couple of things we still want to polish on these, but
No, of course.
I'm looking at there's a couple of areas, but yeah, we're really pleased with it.
We can always make them better, right?
Yeah.
I mean, even the environments as well in there. So we didn't know initially, because they weren't quite final with it. But you've got to cater for people coming from all the various angles that you could do in those environments. And when you put all that on top of it, there's a lot of work involved.
I'm worried. There's a lot of perfectionists in this company. Chris being one of them.
Chris,
This will not be an English-only game. They've got some plans for localizations, as far as I'm aware. They've got a massive, massive fan base in the Spanish, French, German, and Mandarin-speaking communities.
top of the hill.
Yeah, he spots it.
That's cool.
But yeah, I've got another video for you if you want to see it. It's basically the dynamic trigger conditions.
So you're showing us how the magic's done in this one.
Yeah. So that was all done in first person, and that was all done. It was all range based. So you were kind of backing off when you're doing the interrupts. So this kind of shows off the player. In these examples, 118. I'll show you the video.
Ah, Lieutenant! congrats on the big first mission. Exciting stuff.
So that was his focus trigger, realizing he'd seen you, and this is the player. Can you see 180ing? Being fairly obnoxious.
Right.
Oh,
Where was
I see. So it's based on if you're looking at them or not. Okay. Hey, Kaiju, how you
This has
doing?
got the debug markers, haven't you?
Yeah.
From his
Yeah.
feet coming out.
Yeah, he's got an interaction trigger around him, and that's
So it's not
dynamically
just the
scaling
distance
depending
to
on what the
them.
player's
It's also whether or not you're even looking at them. So you could just show the NPC the back of your head and they'll shut
doing.
up.
So when the player 180s, it shrinks. When the player, return 180s again, here you can see it now. Goes back into it, increases, and then he actually picks up the conversation again.
Exciting stuff.
So it's that marker that's going out, and then if that's within proximity, it then triggers a certain action. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
Yeah,
it's
it'll be like a head look and then resume.
yeah. So the player maintains eye contact for say 4 seconds, for example's sake. And he picks up the conversation.
Maybe next.
Because then it gets weird if you don't start talking by then. You gotta break eye contact at that point. Text localization, yes, but the voiceover in multiple, like German, French, Spanish, I would doubt. No, I thought they were. What if you sneak up and surprise him? And then he immediately insults you about blowing up and getting things done?
We decide to go out drinking at this.
See the player's doing it again there.
A real dump. Lieutenant!
You see what I mean about maximum trolling, though? It is, I mean, you see people doing this to test it out. You turn
It does.
around
It's
very
like I said,
strange.
we were trying this out in the office. So me and Reese were talking about it, and they were saying, well, let's go and try it out and see what they do. So you go and engage, usually a coder. So you go and engage them in a conversation.
You're asking for trouble.
180. Yes. So he's just 180 in the middle of it, just turned away. I think we did it to Carlos a couple of times.
No, again, but that's really cool. It's cool to see it functioning and it functioning at the level that it is right now. It's all about immersion, and it's all about us as you're walking around this world wherever you are, being able to have those interactions with those NPCs and have those be believable.
Immersion.
As you said, Phil, not being locked into a conversation, or even if you're not locked in and you're free to roam, even going away, like you said, is going to have some type of consequence potentially, right? Even if it's you're annoying the heck out of the guys, right? Or the girl, or whoever it is that you're abandoning, or or who you're interrupting, or so on. Yeah.
Well, on the Idris, there's 80 people to troll. And it's not about trolling as well. Sometimes you'll kick off a conversation and somebody will start rambling about something and you think, oh, no, I've not got time for this, I'm moving on. You can do that.
The moment we saw this implemented
Me every time.
in its first pass, and I remember being in a review with it, literally, we were all, as Nick was saying, we're all laughing. And then we immediately just went, okay, the amount of people that are, the amount of videos that are going to go online just trolling people, right?
Yes.
Because it is true, even just with the testing that we do, you see it, and the amount of weird wild lines that kind of randomly come in from time to time. You're just like, based off of it's somebody casual, or is it somebody that's more, slightly aggressive, or like you said, a little bit gruff.
Yeah, like what if you did this to the captain of the ship? Would you get in trouble?
And so on, so.
Yeah, and it's evolving all the time as well. Because at the moment we're implementing gestures. So when you break out, as it stands, they kind of stand there fairly static. Then they hit you with a wild line, like, oh, where are you going? But now there'll be gestures going in, stuff like this, and giving you the finger or whatever.
That's cool.
But,
awesome.
So those will be going in. Yeah, it's just layering on the realism.
No, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah,
big challenge
getting the
because
finger.
there's a lot of them. Just on the Idris, I think we've got 245 scenes, and I think 145 of them require this tech.
Yeah,
Wow.
it isn't just in the Idris. It's everywhere throughout the game. We really sort of tried to make the player experience and moving around, all the spaces as immersive as possible. Allowing the player to feel like they're part of the story. As it evolves and everything. And it's the first time I've ever seen anything like this in a game.
Yeah, and this won't be just look at that. I've got a cat charging across the desk. Come here, you. This won't be just the social areas. This will be FPS scenarios. If you're accompanying a bunch of Marines, you can actually leave them as well. They'll have lines for it.
That's
cool. Where the hell are you going?
Yeah. Well, it's one of the advantages when we take the time to build out these systems and build them out to the level that we're holding ourselves to, which is a fairly high standard. Once that system's mature and in place, we also think about the tool side and the implementation side, right? So you have that underlying tech, but then we're also building it so these things can be implemented in a fairly efficient way. And that implementation path matures and matures and matures, meaning it's not just, as you guys said, it's not stuck for one area. Once the tool set's there and once we have a full understanding and edge cases of what breaks and what doesn't, right? That's something then you can then propagate everywhere to the most extent. So you can have these same type of interactions regardless of where you're at.
This talk and this stuff just reminds me of how much stuff isn't actually coming to Star Citizen right now that is in Squadron. I mean, they're maturing this system years ago, but because there's nowhere for it to really fit in Star Citizen because they just don't have this stuff ready, there's no point in having it there. How many things are there in Squadron that, man, I'm really hoping that after Squadron comes out, the development that we see of Star Citizen is night and day from what we see now.
In Squadron,
Yeah.
which is really cool.
Yeah, we're getting faster at it now. In the early days, it was tough. It was a real challenge. We'd be pestering the other departments. Oh, we need an abandon for this, and we need an extra abandon there. We need a chassis for this.
Yeah.
But now, if you plan it right, you can get these in fairly quickly now.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Just don't upset Carlos by abandoning or running away from him, because he's the architect that's helping you put this together.
I know.
It's also the amount of meetings we've had that were reviewing abandons and interrupts, and people just would leave the call without saying anything or interrupting each other. Like, it got old pretty quick, but it did happen quite a bit.
No, yeah,
all good fun.
Yeah, too easy for puns, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time, Phil. It's really cool to see progress.
No, it's great. Cool. I love showing this stuff off. I love it.
Yeah. No, it's good, and it's really good seeing it. So.
Brian sounds so drained here.
Cool.
All right. Okay.
Awesome.
Cheers, guys.
Awesome.
I think we're getting to an end.
Well, absolutely, we are. We're wrapping it up. So thank you, Nick, for joining us, for helping me out here.
It was fun. It was great.
Cool. So I appreciate everyone watching. I always enjoy when we get to show off some more progress and dive deeper into what we're doing here on Squadron 42. And to close out the show, I wanted to leave you with a video that our art director for Squadron 42
Sizzle
put together,
reel.
Nathan Dearsley of Asiato.
Love a sizzle reel. Can I just say this, like, secret crow's nest entrance is really close to the main engineering center on the whole space station. Maybe they should have put a guard down there or something. Toes.
I like the airflow when the doors open.
The freaking poets. Coming in here. I like the airflow. It was a nice whooshing sound. Hey, thank you for the sub, mate. Appreciate you. Hope you're having a good summer, gadget-filled summer, getting to test some tech and stuff, folks. Give the poets a looky-loo. If you don't know who he be do. Can we get a shout out for the man? Thanks for dropping by, dude. Thank you for the sub. Hope you're having a wonderful week. It's like a really long episode of Cribs. Okay, this level is ridiculously complex. There's like passageways everywhere in this thing. That was like Windows 98, dude. They haven't moved on. Well, that was abrupt. Couldn't have done something a little more cool, epic than that to end it. Okay. Well, that was a look. Honestly, I might make a video about that. Yeah, we were inside a big, it's like a space station. It's a comm array. So it looks like this.
Sometimes the player gets to...
And it's like the main comm array in the star system in Squadron 42. I think this is actually really interesting. I think people would be interested in hearing not necessarily verbatim what was said here, but I think we could summarize this in like a 10-minute video to give more insight into what they're thinking for Squadron 42. Not a Star Citizen thing, which is where most of the interest comes from, but I still think it's good info to have. So that's part 2. Hope you guys enjoyed the streams today. I'm really sorry for the crazy hiccup midway through. VPNs and stuff. Discord is blocked here, so sometimes I forget the VPN is on, and then anything can happen at that point. But I do really appreciate everybody who did stick around and continued to watch the stream. Whether you were lurking, chatting, just loving your time here. I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna drop you on over. Bastin. You have any cookies today, dude? Michael. Hope you enjoyed your day. Hey, Moist Noodle's back on. Okay, last time I tried to raid him, he was just getting offline. This time, I'm gonna send you all over. Hopefully he's not finishing up once again, right as I'm finishing up. Like you have to ask. Good. Like the orb. Come Come on, let me rate him. Hey. There we go. All right, y'all. Have a good time over there. Thank you again so much for being here. Appreciate you guys. Come back on Wednesday. I will have some good gameplay for you. We'll either do a new player experience stream or maybe I'll start my 0 to Hero runs. My Roots to Fruits runs, and we'll get some good entertainment out of it. Thank you again, everybody, for being here. Treat yourselves well. Do something well for yourself. Something good for yourself. Have a wonderful day. Eat something you love. Hug somebody you love. Treat yourselves like the wonderful champions you are. And I will see you on Wednesday. Bye-bye, everybody. Have a great day.